Well, let's just try and get an idea about how long this is all going to last. John Hammond is a BBC meteorologist alongside me now. How long is this going to last for, John?
$64,000 question, isn't it? At the moment, it looks as if certainly for the rest of this week, this bitter block of cold air is going to sit across the UK. The computer models are sort of tussling over the notion of some sort of breakthrough from the Atlantic through Christmas weekend, but there's a lot of uncertainty about that, and models find it very difficult to handle this breaking down of blocks of cold air. So the confidence beyond next weekend is very low indeed, and it certainly looks as if it'll stay cold up to and including Christmas.
It was difficult, I think, for you chaps to predict exactly where this snow was going to fall over the past few days as well. You were saying that was a particularly tricky exercise. Are we going to get more snow, though, in the run-up to Christmas, or is it just really the temperatures which are going to keep these conditions, these travelling conditions, hazardous?
Both, to be honest, Tim. I mean, this morning we've had major disruption, of course, across the southwest of England. Now, that belt of snow is moving towards the southeast as I speak. And we're quite concerned about that for the evening rush hour, when we could see, I don't know, 15, 20 centimetres of snow, particularly across the likes of Surrey, Sussex, Kent, and fringing into the suburbs of London as well. Towards the middle of the week, there's another pulse of moisture coming out from France, which again gives the potential for further snowfall, particularly over on the eastern side of the UK. So various bouts of snow potentially, which we are keeping an eye on. But the common theme, as you say, through the next week or so is the intensely cold air. I mean, in the middle of London, well, Kew Gardens, which is virtually in the middle of London last night, got down to the -10, which is phenomenal for such an urban site.
Yeah, I mean, it was -11 in Oxfordshire this morning,
Yeah.
in the countryside. But I mean, my parents' generation would talk about 1962, 1963 as being the coldest winter on record. Has that been broken now? Are we looking at something which is perhaps the coldest snap for 100 years?
Well, I'm sadly old enough to remember December '81, which is a sort of benchmark for cold Decembers in recent decades, and we're on course to beat that one. So that makes it an historic December.
And what were the temperatures in '81?
We use a sort of a shorthand called the Central England temperature, which is a sort of average of all the temperature recorded around the UK, and that was sub-zero for the average for the month. And it looks as if we're going to break that one with another week of cold air likely. But of course winter is December, January and February, and we've got very short memories, haven't we? And if it gets milder in January and stays mild through the rest of the winter, then averaged out this winter won't be all that remarkable. But you know, there are no signs, although it may get milder or less cold, shall we say, after Christmas. The atmosphere remains essentially blocked, and what we mean by that is that the usual progression of Atlantic weather systems from the west, which keep us artificially mild for our latitude, well, that blocking has prevented that mild air from coming in. So we are getting cold air from the north and the east, which is why it's so unusually cold. And we've had a lot of blocking patterns for the last few years, which is why last year was quite cold, last winter was cold, and the winter before. It looks like this winter as well is suffering from this blocking pattern. And the science behind that is still at an early stage, and we're trying to get to grips of what's causing this blocking as a sort of help to predict whether, you know, these groups of winters, cold winters, are going to come in threes and fours, or are they evenly spread. So that's a sort of primitive area of research at the moment. Something we're looking into closely.
All right, fascinating. Thanks very much, John.